Hello and welcome to today's Pick a Card reading. In today's reading, we are receiving a postcard from your future self. For that purpose, I have prepared 3 postcards, underneath which I have prepared 3 message cards underneath that you will see once I give you a close-up. I have not seen the messages, they were shuffled out, and we will get to them in your reading, of course, but let me show you a close-up of these cards. So for group number 1, this is your postcard. It is cacti and succulents. Beautiful illustration. This is the postcard for group 1. Right there is your message. That is the back of the card. Okay, for group 2, this is your postcard, and there's your message. Here is your card, some lovely illustrations of jellyfish. Let me know if you have any idea if this is anatomically correct, because this looks wild. Let me show you group 3 now. For group 3, this is your postcard. Here is your message. Butterflies. And note the number 8 up here. For group 3, this is your postcard. So I'm going to give you a moment to zone in or zone out, whichever you need. Before I do that, let me just remind you, if you would like to book a personal reading, you can do so on my website, which is linked in the description. I will never reach out to you through DMs or comments or anything like that, so please don't get scammed, but I would love it if you booked a personal reading through my website. Anything else? No, let's get into it. So, I'm going to give you a moment right now, and as soon as you are ready, you can head to whichever group, whichever postcard is calling you the most. Timestamps are in the description below, and now you have a moment to zone in or zone out. I will meet you at your reading. Hi group 1, this is your reading if you chose the cacti and succulents postcard. Look at how cute they are. All of them. Each and every one. So cute. I'm going to set this off to the side right here, and we're going to take a look at what's on the back of your postcard. Let's take a look. Okay, so this is a message from your future self. Let's keep that in mind. It says, why do we notice the speck in our eye, but not the mountains, the fields, and the olive groves? Why do we notice the speck in our eye, but not the mountains, the fields, and the olive groves? This to me is talking about how your future self is reminding you that a change in perspective is always possible, but we have to choose to change our depth of perception, right? Just the way the camera does this, it can focus here, it can focus there. Your eyes do that naturally, right? And so does your mind. Whenever your mind gets stuck on something, you have the ability to kind of rearrange the depth of perception. And so why do we notice the speck in our eye, but not the mountains, the fields, the olive groves? Talks about being distracted by, I don't necessarily want to say little things. It's more so that we are being distracted by the immediate things, the things that we can feel, the things that where there's a sensation of immediacy. But this is a reminder from your future self that there is a shift that is possible, and also that you are about to embark on, because otherwise how would your future self be able to have such a change in perspective, right? So this can have to do with a situation or just life in general, because as I'm looking at these cacti as well, and the question, why do we notice the speck in our eye, is almost like this idea of the fact that cacti have, or not all of them, but a lot of them do have their thorns and their pricklies. I don't know what the scientific name for it is. They got their pricklies, right? And they have those for a reason, right? Those have evolved for a reason. So there are certain defenses that we have that have been put in place for a reason. May it be evolution, or may it be conditioning. There's something where we are having a difficult time as of right now, possibly, with some form of vulnerability and allowing space for change as well. Let's get some tarot cards. Let's get some messages from your future self. We have the King of Wands. Ooh, we have the High Priestess. This definitely indicates like there's going to be a strong shift in perception. Not just perspective, but perception, the things that you are able to perceive. There's going to be, and especially because we're talking about the depth of perception, right? There's going to be like an up-leveling in depth of perception. Interesting. This is an yeah, and the Hanged Man. See, that's exactly, this is very much Hanged Man energy, because it's this moment of change in perspective that comes from really kind of consulting with just yourself, with just your higher self, and really kind of like enacting some stillness so that you can see all the moving parts around you, so that you can like step in a way that's more coordinated. I hope that makes sense. But this progression is really interesting because we go from the King of Wands to the High Priestess to the Knight of Wands. So there's a step back, and this is a step in humility. This is a step in, there's gonna be a moment where you feel really passionate about something, really fiery, very opinionated probably, and almost arrogant to a point. Just this idea of like, oh yeah, I'm connected, I'm tapped in, I understand, I see all the information that I need to see. And then having this moment of true connection and true tapping in and truly seeing things, but not seeing it all, but seeing things in a way where you recognize I'm not capable of ever seeing it all. Like it's just not something that is possible, right? That this recognition of my perspective is always going to be biased because it's my perspective. And so that then brings us to the Knight. And so I say that this is a step back, but I think it's a very healthy step back because it's actually putting you in a position to be more open to learning and more open to discovering and exploring than you were before this shift in understanding. So this is a very humbling moment, but we'll pull some more cards to see if this is something that shifts only internally or if there's an external sign of this. Oh, okay, we'll take it this way. We have the Hierophant and we have the Star. Yeah, there's something where you feel as of like right now, it almost feels like you're very comfortable. Like there is a certain arrogance, but it's not the arrogance of like, oh, I know it all, but I have access to know it all. Like there's There's just this assurance of like, oh, like I'm pretty sure that if I sat down and figured this out, I would have all of the information. And now let me tell you that this sounds kind of vague, but this can have to do with either your perspective of the world in terms of economics or politics, but this can also be a lot smaller of a lens. So this can have to do with a very specific person and a situation where you feel like, oh, I know all there is that I need to know in order to feel a certain way. And this is the process of gaining some insight that shows you that things are a lot more complicated, not complicated, but complex. Things are a lot more complex than you recognized previously, than possibly right now. I feel that you are already in this process and your future self is kind of like cheering you on here. You're really about to hit on something very deep, because the way this is the star card, but the way this looks here is almost like you're digging deep when it comes to how you relate to things or people. Yeah, right, as I said, people, we got the Lovers card come out, and this card wanted to come out as well with the Four of Wands. Okay, at the bottom of the deck, we have the Seven of Wands. Yeah, look at that. Look at the Seven of Wands and how there's all these different platforms. This is a recognition of there are many ways to reach a certain level, right? You can take this ladder, you can take this ladder, that there's many ways, that there's not one correct way. There's a lot here about compassion, self-compassion. But let's take a look. So we have the Hierophant, we have the Star, we have the Lovers, and we have the Four of Wands. Okay, so for some people, this is going to be very select, but for some people, I actually see you. This is, you have to know, like this, as soon as I say it, it has to feel like, oh yeah, that is absolutely for me, okay? For some people, I see you falling in love with a friend or someone who has been around for a while, and this change in perspective actually opens you up to recognizing something really beautiful is in front of you, and you're going to want to make it nest, make it stay. But it comes with this idea, like it starts off with this idea of what you seek in a relationship, and like very strict ideas. And now let me just say, if this isn't about a person, this can also have to do with a job or a belief system, right? Apply it as it fits. But there's something where your ideas were very strict and they were very by the book and very like just boxed you in a way that constricted your vision. However, I think that was also necessary because we saw the Hanged Man, and this High Priestess in particular, her eyes are actually covered and they are replaced by this sensory mask that resembles kind of like a moth or something, where it's just like, you know, that she's seeing with her senses, she's seeing with her intuition, right? So there was something where you were following some kind of, I'm hearing regimen, but some kind of someone else's expectations in a way. And then when this moment happens where you really dig deep and you really dig into your intuition and you really connect with this very, very deep part of yourself, when that happens, it's extremely healing, and it kind of readjusts your vision in a way where then you are able to take a look around you and see things that you had taken for granted. And that also includes either you falling in love with someone that has already been around you, or that includes you seeing the relationship that you are in as something that is beautifully available for you to build upon instead of something that is restricting you, right? That this is something that we're changing our perspective from, oh, I have to fit into this, into I get to create something with someone else. So again, whether this is a person or whether this is a job or a passion, there's something where you bought in to some narrative that was very confining, and an internal part of you is rebelling against that and breaking you free. And so your future self is just saying, like, you don't even know how your perspective is going to shift. And also they can't really tell us too much about it, because part of the cracking open is the discomfort, right? That kind of, there's something about kind of like a temperature change. Like I'm seeing this imagery of something cracking open and then cold air coming in, and that changing the temperature that then allows to crack something open even more. Something along those lines. Okay, now let's get some oracle cards. I'm gonna pull an archetype card. This is gonna be a card of which aspect your future self wants you to embrace. So with the archetype cards, I always want to reiterate that these are certain aspects. They don't define your entire personality. It's just a part of your, the way you carry yourself, right? The way you show up in the world. It's just an aspect. It's not, this isn't your role in life. So for group one, can we get one from their future self? Oh, there we go. We already got it. We got Femme Fatale. Highlights the erotic energy of the feminine. Opens your heart when your dependency is rejected. That opens your heart, that crack open, I think is really important. That crack open, that there's something where something's going to come through the cracks and it's going to completely shift your perspective. And you're going to see like some sort of bigger picture, and you're going to appreciate. There's something here. And Femme Fatale is going to apply whether you identify as a man or a woman or non-binary. It's just the archetype of this energy that is very kind of seductive and very passionate, which we see here already with all these wands, right? There is a lot of passion when it comes to this relationship or this career or whatever it is that you're very focused on, even just your relationship to yourself and your higher self and your spirit team. There's a lot of passion there. Now, a lot of passion can easily turn into, I'm trying to make sense of something that came up at the bottom of the deck. There was a card, and I don't know if you saw it poking out, but I do feel that there is a warning here from your future self to not, how can I untangle this? It makes sense in my mind, but it's energies. There's a warning here to not sell yourself short, because I think the shift in perspective that's coming for you is something about how you are valued. And I think in the past there's some kind of pattern where you felt valued if you saw some kind of material proof of being valued, right? And moving forward, I think your perspective is shifting into there are much more ways to appreciate your value. That feels kind of vague, but I'm really having a hard time putting that into words. It's this idea that give me just a second with this. Because there is something about an exchange of energy. There's an exchange of energy that they want you to embrace, but it's not about what you get out of it, but the feeling that arises from it. There's also a lot about control here, and going back to the cacti as well, especially because I was talking about perhaps falling in love with someone who's already been around you. There's maybe some kind of defensive mechanisms around that we're having, or it might be some kind of defensive mechanisms that we have around a belief system that we kind of try to stay away from. What your future self wants you to embrace moving through this energy is to keep an open mind and an open heart, and to kind of flirt with new perspectives with this femme fatale. Because the thing is that I think what's going to be really rough in this unfolding is that when we're broken open, we feel like we're losing control. We feel like we are at the whim of something else because we're being broken open, right? This energy is asking you to, you already have a lot of passionate energy, and this energy is just asking you to change your perspective even before the shift in perspective comes. Your future self is saying to kind of be, in order for you to feel empowered throughout this, you want you to be, your future self wants you to be a little bit cheeky with it, to have fun with it, to not take it so serious. I think that's the best I got from that. That was very, I mean, they really just kind of, we have so much fire energy here. Your future self really just wants you to I'm hearing so many things right now. I heard burn it down. Your future self wants you to burn it down, but I think that's like the old way of doing things. We want to burn that down. But I really feel like this femme fatale energy is about how to remain in control when you feel like you're not in control, which is kind of, if we think about this, if we think about the archetype of the femme fatale, within Western society, a femme fatale is a openly erotic, sexual, empowered, emboldened woman. And that oftentimes typically goes against the grain of what is expected of a good woman, right? In a social context. I'm not here to agree with any of that, but it is true, right? There are certain standards, and the femme fatale is a character that is on the scale of like the Madonna whore complex. On that spectrum, we're looking at more of the whore side, right? But it is so, and I'm just getting really nerdy now, because the femme fatale is a concept that came up with film noir, and it's really about the dangers that lurk from an empowered woman, right? A woman that isn't afraid to take what she wants and to demand what she wants, and to scheme her way through a story. And so what your future self is saying here is that you are supposed to move through this in a way that makes you feel, even though you are in shaky ground, that you are in control. That's really important. Even when you are on shaky ground, you are in control. Okay, we have the first house, we have Aquarius energy, and we have the moon. So here's where the changes are going to come in, and the change in perspective, I think, is going to have a lot to do in with you in relation to others. Like there's going to be a huge shift in how you view yourself, and especially how you think about yourself and what you think you're capable of. And it's really going to set you free in an emotional way. I am digging that. Feels like a lot of like analysis of looking back and taking a look at like emotional patterns from the past. And again, I see you just taking more control, but at the same time, I can't believe that just happened. Because I was gonna say, I see you taking more control, but at the same time, I see you in the bigger picture surrendering more, and then we got relinquish control. Even when things are when you're on unsturdy ground, right? And at the bottom is contemplate death and beyond, because we're talking like big picture shifts here. That is so funny. Because even when I was grabbing those cards, I was thinking, I just told you you're going to remain in control. And in my head, I was thinking, well, none of us really have any control over anything. That is so funny. It still makes sense though, because it's about remaining in control of your own powers, but not expecting to be able to control anyone else, right? And also giving up some sort of expectations, which is what we had talked about in this first spread. Giving up some sort of expectations in others or in something particular, whether that is a belief system or a relationship. That is so funny. Again, this is going to be very particular, but for some of you, what I'm actually seeing is kind of like a, this is going to be very rare, but I do feel like I have to say it. For someone here, your future self is telling you like, hey, there's a chance that you will move out of a relationship and then move into a relationship that is a lot more authentic, versus being stuck in something very confining and constricting. Let's get you some more oracle cards. I just overall get the sense that you are trying to make something work that doesn't necessarily fit in to who you're growing into. And as you are growing, you're recognizing, okay, I need to let go of this thing. We have Cave at the bottom of the deck, and then Guardians. Let's grab this one. Okay. Okay, an oracle card for group 1. I'm trying to make sense of this Guardians card. I really see you giving in to someone. Going back to the cacti, I'm getting this feeling like, because you know how there's cacti and they bloom? Like I'm almost getting this feeling that before this shift in perspective, you're just the cacti, and then after this shift in perspective, you're the cacti with a blossom on it, where it's like, I I can be prickly, but I can also be delicate and beautiful. Like there's something here. There's definitely a duality, because it's like I can be, especially because it's the first house, right? It's the idea of I can be things that are at odds with each other because my perspective has changed. So I can be two different things, which is someone who is in control and someone who releases all control. I can be two different things, and being two different things that seem at odds with each other actually makes me a more well-rounded and more holistic person with the fact that these two cats are like mirrored. But then also the fact that this card represents guardians, it's just a good reminder that your higher self is by your side as you're going through this shift. Look at this. Embrace your growth. Exactly. A weed is but an unloved flower. And then dive in. Which dive in was... Oh, we got cave. Okay. Cave, I think, is pertaining to this middle row that we had with the High Priestess and the Star card. Whatever it is, there's something that we're going to go really deep into. You're really going to explore something really deeply. And the moment that you come out of that self-cave, that deepest part of yourself, you're going to understand yourself in a way that is going to change how you understand everything around you as well. Right? I'm trying to think of a way to work that into an analogy, and I can't think of anything. Nothing's coming up. But it's like just understanding. Okay, if you think about when you're doing a puzzle, and there's like an area of the puzzle where you're like, I don't know what piece is supposed to go there, but bit by bit, as you're working on everything else, you create like the negative shape of that puzzle piece, and by the time that you've made sense of everything else, you recognize the what the puzzle piece looks like just by having looked at everything else, right? And so this is more so having the puzzle piece and focusing so much on it, and everything else is already in place, but there's like a few holes across the board. And it's like really studying the edges so that you're not just sitting there and trying to make things fit where they don't fit, but really studying the outline of something so that you can recognize where it belongs. Okay, so the dive in, we sometimes need to remember that we're not soldered to the rails of life. Throw your hands up and enjoy the ride. That we're not soldered to the rails of life is again about control and relinquishing control, and knowing that even when you relinquish control, you are still in control of yourself. Okay, I think we got some balance here. It took me a little bit longer. This one was a tricky one, but I feel good about where we're at. So your future self is really kind of saying like, hey, your future self is like, hey girl, there's a big drop ahead, especially with this dive in, right? You see this? Your future self is like, hey girl, there's a big drop ahead. And when you pass that drop, you're not going to look at things the way that you used to look at them. And it's going to be a shift for the better. And it's going to be a shift that helps you align with what is meant for you a lot more naturally, a lot more effortlessly, instead of having to try and make something fit. But that's only going to come from you really, really getting in touch with yourself so that you can open up to this new perspective. And it's going to make you feel very different from the person that you are now. And that doesn't mean that one version or the other is the wrong version. Absolutely not. You're just evolving into a version of yourself that is more aware and more aligned, and also more tuned in, really, really more that's what I'm seeing, just more. And what I'm actually seeing is kind of like when you put your hand in like really like warm sand, the way the sand just kind of like rises around your fingers. That's what I'm actually seeing. That's what it feels like. More grounded for sure. Okay, I'm gonna leave this there. I did not mean to let this run this long, but this was a tricky one, so I really wanted to make sure we made sense of this. Embrace your growth. That's where you're headed. You will feel we have the Seven of Wands over here. You will feel challenged through this. But I do see that the biggest challenge is going to be you challenging yourself and really kind of diving in and diving deep, and making peace with the things about yourself that cannot, that you cannot make fit together. And so because of that, you kind of have to expand the bubble around it, because they can't, it's almost like magnets when they are like against, when the polarization is off from magnets, where they, to the point where they repel each other, where it's like that just becomes a point of conflict. And that's what's happening with like your belief system or this person, where it's like things are kind of like we're zoomed in too close. But if we zoom out and give this some space, they can coexist. These parts of yourself can coexist in a way that's a lot more harmonious, and in a way where we're not just focused on the speck in our eye, but we notice the speck in our eye, but we can also change our depth of perception and notice the mountains. That is mindfulness, right? Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Otherwise, I'm just gonna talk forever about this one, because this one is very particular and complex, and I love it. I don't know that you're gonna love this journey. There is a way to love this journey, absolutely, because it's a real strong deepening of your intuition and you getting to know yourself. So it's beautiful, and I think you will agree that it's beautiful in hindsight. Where you're at right now, I know that it's going to be uncomfortable for a while, but know that your higher self is totally, absolutely, like, you will have done the work. You are going to do the work, and it's going to put you in a position to receive in a way where it's just so aligned and so supportive and so celebratory, because you have gone through this process. So you will be better off for it. Okay? I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really hope this resonates, and I hope this comes to absolute full fruition for you, because it's a beautiful shift in perspective. Okay? Right, I hope I get to read for you again sometime. Until then, take care. Hi Group 2, this is your reading if you chose these lovely squiggly jellyfish. Look at them. Look at that. Like, what is going on there? Who knows? Not me. All right, I'm gonna set that down right here, and then we're gonna take a look at what is the message on your postcard from your future self. Ouch. Oof, my love. Sometimes the heart must break in order to open. Sometimes the heart must break in order to open. All right, we're gonna set that right down here, and then we're gonna get into some tarot and see what's going on. But immediately, isn't there some kind of weird fun fact about jellyfish and hearts? Oh, I'm too curious. I have to Google that right quick, because isn't it, I don't know, do they have like extra hearts? Do they have like no heart? What's going on? I need to know. Jellyfish. Yeah, they don't have any hearts. They're lacking brains, blood, or even hearts. Listen, I'm not comparing you to a jellyfish, but that is interesting. that we would get something that particularly mentions the heart with an imagery of an animal, of a creature that technically doesn't have a heart. So that is telling me that there may have been some kind of, there may be ahead of you if it hasn't happened already. Because honestly, what I'm thinking is that this postcard from your future self is kind of like this feels like a confirmation of like, hey love, we made it through. We made it through and we're feeling more than ever. I don't think that this is a warning of heartbreak ahead. I think this pertains more so to the healing of a heartbreak. Meaning the heartbreak would have already occurred either in your recent past or something that happened a while ago and you're having a difficult time healing from, or it's something that you're currently experiencing, right? I don't necessarily feel that this is a warning of like, watch out, your heart is about to break. That doesn't feel right to me. So I do think it's more so of like the perspective of it happened for a reason and we've been waiting for things to feel that way. And this is a note from your higher self, from your future self, saying like, we made it. We made it to that point of understanding. Sometimes the heart must break in order to open. And along with the imagery of these jellyfish and the idea that they don't have hearts, I'm getting the imagery of the Grinch when he says his heart grew by 3 sizes. So I feel like there's some kind of experience that's really going to kind of like make you aware of your heart, right? Which then means that it's almost like we're not so much focusing on the heartbreak, but more so focusing on, I think your future self is more so focusing on the fact that there is going to be some kind of moment, situation, or feeling, just anything like that in your future where you're really going to feel your heart again and you're going to feel alive and you're going to feel every part of it, and it's just going to feel very alive. And it may not have felt like that for a long time because, first of all, I mean, the last couple years have been awful for the collective in general, right? And there's a lot of numbing and distracting going on. And I'm just getting this imagery of when you are in deep meditation and you stay still for so long, sometimes we can lose our feelings of our limbs and our bodies, and our body just becomes like this mass of energy, right? And we just kind of lose all awareness of, let's say, our hand. And then it isn't until we kind of like come out of that meditative state and we kind of stretch or move, and then it's like, oh wow, I can feel my hand again. That's kind of the sensation that I get of like, oh wow, I can feel my heart again. It's like you're gonna feel so ecstatic about something that it's like you feel every crevice of your heart. Okay, let's take a look at what cards are coming out though. We have the 6 of Wands. We have the Judgment card. I mean, that already in itself is celebration. Celebration and success. We have the 3 of Pentacles. Let's get some more context for this. Oh, you're going to be, this is exactly lining up with what I've talked about, because this is the 7 of Wands underneath the 6 of Wands, which is a natural progression, but the way that I read my cards is that this is kind of like on the surface and this is in the roots. And so what this is showing me is that there's going to be this feeling of pride and accomplishment and success and positive feedback that you're going to receive because you have been overcoming obstacles, because you have been overcoming conflict of mind and conflict of emotions, and you have been taking it step by step. I mean, you may have reached plateaus and felt like it was never going to end, but you have been taking one step at a time and just pushing yourself through this. And so there's great cause for celebration. Let's take a look at this Judgment card. Which one? We have the Death card. Yeah, this is deciding that you are completely done with something. And then the Three of Pentacles and the Three of Wands. I love this. I love this. Okay. And the High Priestess at the bottom of the deck. What's underneath that? The Ace of Wands. Yeah, this is you. Your higher self is telling you, even if right now you feel like you've been running in place, if you feel like you've been stagnant, there is a moment ahead of you where you are literally choosing, I am done here. This is not what is going to keep my heart beating. This is not what's going to stop my heart from beating. This is not anything that has an impact on me anymore. And then we move into the Three of Pentacles and the Three of Wands, which indicates that you are opening yourself up to cooperating with the universe and with a greater plan, and kind of getting out of, and I don't necessarily see that here, aside from maybe a little bit with the Death card, but I see you getting out of like a wallowing phase, getting out of this energy of feeling really kind of down over something that you've experienced. Let's get some dice around this. We have the 4th house, we have Libra, and we have North Node. Okay, so we're bringing some balance into your foundation. Specifically, you know what? Specifically, the 4th house is the house of home, but also the house of family. So here's what I'm picking up. For some of you, this could have to do with the fact that growing up in your family environment, in your home environment, it was kind of like a everyone for themselves, everyone take care of themselves, everyone kind of tend to their own needs. And therefore, you weren't really open to, you weren't really in a place to trust others. And therefore, because there was this lack of trust, you likely got yourself into some kind of romantic situation or a friendship situation, or even like a choice of career where you perpetuated this pattern of not being able to trust, and therefore kind of set up like a grand master plan of kind of breaking your own heart. And I know that's going to be difficult to face, because I know that that's not what it feels like when it happens. It's like, no, this other person did this. But we do contribute to setting up these traps for ourselves. But you did this in a way to kind of end some type of pattern. And this will force you into really kind of communicating and connecting more, connecting a lot more. This brings some kind of balance into your foundation. And that was something that was an aligned lesson for you. So you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. I think this is not easy at all. But I do think that that you are passing with flying colors. I see you opening up to really kind of making true experiences. Making true experiences is what's coming through with this Three of Wands. And again, a lot of wands in this reading. I had a lot of wands in the last reading as well. Let's get you an archetype card. So this archetype card is going to focus on what's an aspect of an archetype that your future self wants you to embrace as you move through this energy. We have Beggar. Confronts empowerment at the level of physical survival, awakens the spiritual authority of humility, compassion, and self-esteem. This is interesting. This is interesting because I feel like the emphasis is on the idea of, throughout this whole reading, the emphasis is on the idea of you opening up to support and opening up to co-creating. In the past, it feels like you were very set on, like, I have to do it myself. I have to do everything myself. Like, I have to take care of myself. I have to protect myself. Like, I can't trust anyone. And it's almost like constantly being so focused on, I can't trust anyone because then I'll get my heart broken and that's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me. And it's like, okay, but what comes after the worst thing happening? You're free from that now. You're free from that. You've gained experience, and it puts you in a place to be able to move differently through the world. It's almost like being freed from your greatest fear because it came true. And so we facilitated it coming true to some extent. And so what lies beyond that, especially with this Death card and the Judgment card, what lies beyond that? And I think what lies beyond that for you is the progress towards working with people and accepting support and accepting connection in a way that you have never done before. So the fact that Beggar comes out, and this is something your future self wants you to embrace moving through these energies, right? Let's think about that. Now, a lot of people will hear the term beggar, and they think of somebody sitting in the street asking for money, and they have very negative ideas of how did that person get there? Why did that person get there, right? When in reality, the compassion that we as human beings owe each other should really kind of emphasize the fact that it doesn't matter how that person got there. What matters is that that person needs help, that person needs support. There is no shame in asking for support. There is a lot of societal constructs of shame. But there should be, from a humanitarian aspect, there should be no shame around asking for support, right? And so the light attributes of this Beggar energy confronts empowerment at the level of physical survival. How can you feel empowered when everything has been taken away from you? When your worst fear has come true, how can you find empowerment at that point in time? It is possible. Trust me. Awakens the spiritual authority of humility, compassion, and self-esteem. This is a shift. This is a huge shift in your foundation, and it's a shift that is meant to bring balance towards the conditioning that you received from a very young age, from a place that you were supposed to be able to grow in safety and compassion and support. And I think that was lacking, or at least throughout like teenage years or so, we're within, let's say just within like the last 10, 15 years, there's an environment that you were part of that wasn't actually supportive. And that is what we're breaking free from and bringing balance into. Let's get another oracle card. So your future self is actually really saying that while whatever it is that broke your trust was incredibly impactful, in the long run, it's impactful in a positive way because it's opening you up. Sometimes the heart must break in order to open. This is opening you up. These Three of Pentacles and the Three of Wands, this is opening you up to working with others, to new experiences, because you're like, this cannot be all. It cannot be that I have experienced the thing that I was most afraid of and then my story just ends. No, there's so much beyond that, and you know that. And that's why I keep saying too that there is something that fell out or that came to some kind of really difficult conclusion. And that's why I keep saying it's like we definitely contributed to it, because this was something that subconsciously you kind of set this up for yourself. And please don't take this as, especially if you experienced abuse, don't take this as you asked for it. Please, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's just more so that we get raised in patterns, and we feel most comfortable in situations and relationships that repeat those patterns. And us choosing that oftentimes enables those patterns to come to a head, where then it's like, okay, do we completely give up, or do we overcome this, and do we break this pattern? And you're breaking this pattern. Ooh, we have ground yourself. Okay, so your future self wants you to, and we have examine your integrity at the bottom of the deck, meaning examine where you are being performative, where you are just fulfilling the expectations of others instead of living in your true authenticity. With ground yourself, especially with ground yourself and this beggar card, this is talking a lot about humility. And I'm not really picking up on you having an ego, but I am picking up on humility being necessary, because I think you expect somewhat the worst of people, or at least in the past have done so. I think you're stepping away from that. But humility also has a lot to do with leaving room for humans to surprise you in a positive way, right? But also ground yourself is very important in terms of your physical body, taking care of your physical body, because there's a lot that is shifting here, and especially since we are talking about your foundation, right? This is bringing your foundation into balance so that you can have more healthy relationships moving forward. And in order to do that, we really want to make sure that a lot of this emotional shifting can take place in an environment where we are taking care of our physical body, so that we don't have to deal with issues bubbling up on both sides, right? So that means really staying hydrated, meditating when you can, and it doesn't have to be strict meditation. You can find some kind of practice that is like meditation. So whether that's reading a book or painting or singing or chanting, there's a lot of things that you can do that can kind of like bring you back into your body, and not have you kind of running in circles, Now let's see which deck. This one. For group 2, we get a message from their higher self, from their future self. That's what we're talking about. I like how it just sits there. We have dive in. And at the bottom of the deck is honey. Yeah, see, you will be rewarded for this really difficult work. You will be rewarded because dive in is talking a lot about shadow work. It's talking a lot about facing your shadow and facing where you have enabled certain patterns. Even if you are a victim of the pattern, there are still ways in which we enable these patterns a lot of times. And there's also something about showing up for yourself in a way that is actually going to facilitate you being able to let others in. Meaning, there's almost in your past, there's almost this feeling of abandonment that then bled into you abandoning parts of yourself. And I think the beggar card is kind of connecting to that as well, where it's like there's a part of ourselves that is just waiting for us to return to ourselves. And you're going to do that. You're going to do that, and it's going to be so worth it. Queen underneath that, it's going to be so worth it. It's interesting because there is a similar theme as group 1, just kind of different ways of it playing out, but there's a huge focus of our future selves really wanting us to kind of not look away, but actually face it, because the more we look away, the more we just draw out the process. Okay, let's get one more oracle card for group 2. Oh, that was fast. Cosmic power. I'm an instant star, just add water and stir. I'm feeling like another one. Cosmic power. I'm also, the way that this card is connecting with this dive in, there's something, like I just said, that we kind of like try to like not look at, and by avoiding it we draw that out, right? There's something here about not just looking at it, but actually fully embracing it, because there's a lot of power that lies within that. There's a lot of power that lies within your shadow. I'm also picking up on, there's a lot of insight that you would be able to gain from astrology with that cosmic power, and dive into your cosmic power. We have just ride, at least I'm on a path. And then at the bottom of the deck is breathe. If you want to conquer the anxiety of life, live in the moment, live in the breath. And just ride. That is funny, but in both, and it's not the whole deck that has backgrounds like this, but both of these cards have these very cosmic backgrounds that very much align with this card. Okay, so let's summarize this. Let's break this down. So your future self is letting you know that there was a reason for all of this, and I do believe that the reason for that is to break some kind of pattern when it comes to relationships with people that you love, whether that is romantic or close friendships, and even your family. Like after this shift, you'll be able to connect to your family differently, even if they don't experience a shift, even if they don't change their ways. You'll be able to apply more compassion and humility when dealing with them. And I see you taking a lot more accountability for some of your behaviors and some of your avoidant behaviors. And I just see you being so willing to let go of everything that you need to let go so that you can free yourself up to work with the universe and to free yourself up for new experiences that are going to help you release those old patterns and create new healthy ones. That is dope. Like, I don't know what else to say. You're doing the work. And your future self is just, you're very humble about it. Like, it's interesting because your future self is like with ground yourself and beggar. I think your future self knows definitely, I think it knows not to hype you up because we had the Six of Wands out first with the Seven of Wands, because you already know what you're capable of. Like, if they were to hype you up too much, if you were to hype you up too much, you wouldn't follow through with this, right? Because it's comfort. It's like, oh yeah, I get stuff done easily. And I think, again, that comes from a place of not really having a lot of sources to rely on in the past. You're very self-sufficient. You're very capable, and you're very competent. Absolutely. And so this shift and your higher self is like, well, yeah, of course you're going to overcome this. Like, that was never in question. But the question is, how are we going to get you to a point to want to open up to people and to want to, like, really kind of take a look and examine how you've enabled yourself in the past, right? And that's where your future self is kind of like, girl, let's ground ourselves. Let's kind of like tone it down. Let's bring it down a notch. Like, we haven't experienced all there is to experience yet. I think that's what it comes down to. Yep. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave it there. I think this is pretty solid message. So I hope that it helps you, and I hope that it gives you something to look forward to, because again, I do feel that this is a clear indication of you overcoming some kind of very deep pain, and overcoming, through the process of overcoming that pain, breaking a cycle and breaking a pattern, and being able to build on a much more solid foundation in the future. So it's a lot to look forward to, but it's also a lot of work, right? And it's very, it's not the kind of work where you can do a little to-do list. It's just a lot of self-reflection and a lot of not shying away from the things that your shadow tries to do, and really kind of embracing looking at it and really kind of drawing power from that. Again, with the Judgment card and the Death card, there's a lot of power that you will gain from truly releasing and accepting the death of something, finality of something. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that this gave you a little bit of insight and guidance, and I hope I get to read for you again sometime. Until then, take care. Hi, Group 3. This is your reading if you chose these lovely butterflies on your postcard from your future self. Very interesting about this 8. To me, it's kind of giving it's kind of giving a message around transformation is perpetual. Transformation, the work never stops, which is exhausting. But let's see. If the structure doesn't permit dialogue, the structure must be changed. Beautiful quote. This is the message of your postcard from your future self. If the structure doesn't permit dialogue, the structure must be changed. Now, this applies to relationships. This applies to the relationship to yourself, friendships, family, work. If the structure doesn't permit dialogue, which means working together and, communicating back and forth, but also dialogue is just the idea of more than just one person having a say, the structure must be changed. So in combination with the butterfly, it makes me think of how the butterfly lives its life in different phases, right? And these phases are so extremely different that its entire structure changes. It goes from caterpillar to butterfly. The entire structure has been changed. Its entire anatomy has been changed. And in order to do so, it had to go through the stage of becoming complete goo to form this new structure. So sometimes the changes necessary can be quite all-encompassing. So just something to keep in mind. But if the structure doesn't permit dialogue, meaning if you are in some kind of situation, environment where you don't have a say, where you don't get to voice your needs, where you don't get to voice your opinions, where you don't get to voice your joy or your sorrow, then you need to change the environment so that you can live in a place where you get to do those things. Now, let's get some tarot cards for group 3. Messages from their future self. Yes, okay. Immediately, we have the Two of Wands, and look at that. If that is not trying to break free from constriction, being so focused on like, look at this bird. This bird can fly away, and this idea of like, I wish I was this bird. When in reality, this cage is open, it's just sitting over your head. It's not really keeping you. All right, there's the Nine of Wands. So many wands in all the readings today. And we have the Hierophant. I feel like right now you're feeling, yeah, we have the Hermit underneath the Two of Wands. I feel like right now you're feeling very powerless. We have the Star. Interesting, this is the second time the Star comes out in this position. And we have 2 cards. We have the Hanged Man along with the Lovers. That is also the second time that the Lovers comes out in that position. Interesting. And then we have the Five of Wands at the bottom of the deck. And I'm just going to put this over here. Interesting though. This Five of Wands indicates to me that there's definitely a lot of conflict that you are facing on a on all levels, really, on a surface level as well as on a deeper level. There's something that you're feeling really alone in. There's perhaps even like a decision or a desire where you haven't quite committed to it yet, and you're feeling really kind of alone, and it almost feels like, oh, here's something I'm getting. It almost feels like you choosing to change the structure that we're talking about makes you fearful that you're going to be even more alone. But I don't see that happening. There's definitely a very strong theme in all of these readings today, and it has a lot to do with really, really going deep inwards. And I think it makes sense because when we talk about our future selves, right? I mean, right now, you are your present self right now. But technically you are the future self of an past version of yourself, right? And if you think back to some kind of situation that bothered you, let's say 10 years ago, and with the perspective and knowledge and wisdom you have gained since then, you look back on it in a much more tempered way, right? It's a less of an immediate experience, and so you're able to kind of take a look at it. And a lot of times when we talk about our past selves, we're a little bit blasé. We're a little bit like, ugh, she was so silly, or my goodness, I should have known better, or like we come off very like we almost don't have a true understanding of what it was even like anymore because we're so far removed from it. And so as we grow through experiences and through new cycles, we come to see things in a much bigger picture. And that's kind of the theme that I've been seeing in these readings, is that your point of view expands, but yours expands by really going inward. So with this Nine of Wands and the Star, there's a lot of healing to gain in overcoming this feeling of isolation. And then I do see you becoming part of some kind of organization or some kind of structure that is really going to shift your perspective on how to connect with people. That's what I'm seeing. And that's where this dialogue is coming in, right? So if the structure doesn't permit dialogue, the structure must be changed. Here's what I'm seeing for a lot of you is that the structure that isn't permitting dialogue is a self-limiting behavior. It is a self-limiting belief system. And it is the idea of, I don't connect with people, or nobody understands me, or I'm too much, or I'm not pretty enough. It's a lot of this idea of, it's not so much that the world doesn't permit dialogue to happen with you. It's that you have built a structure around yourself. And I'm not saying that this is your fault, because it was probably through conditioning, which means that everybody else told you how to build this structure. But you have built a structure around yourself that keeps you very isolated, and that keeps you very removed from being able to establish dialogue with anybody. And that doesn't mean that you don't have any friends right now or anything like that, but the idea of truly, authentically sharing your thoughts is super scary to you. And there's a lot of conflict when it comes to this, because there's your ego that says like, no, don't change, don't allow anyone in, you're going to be taken advantage of, or you're not going to be understood, and you're going to feel, this is that structure, your ego telling you, no, you need to stay safe, you need to stay vigilant, you need to. That is something that you're bringing healing into, and that opens you up to connecting to something larger than yourself that can then help you tune out that you need to even more through some kind of behavioral shift. So I don't know if that's you joining a certain community, so whether that's an online community or whether that's a community in person. That could be you going to a ceramics class and finding people and connecting with them there, and that could be you starting some kind of study. That could be you going back to college. That could be you learning something new and it really clicking with you in a way that, because it doesn't have to be a community of people, it can also be a community of thought. So that could be you learning about a certain subject and finding that it really, really deeply resonates with you, and things start to make sense in a way where you're able to commute. Well, apparently, I was going to say communicate, but apparently you will be able to commute in a way where it's like, okay, now I feel like I'm part of the conversation. I'm part of the dialogue. I'm understanding what the universe is saying, or I'm understanding what my peers are saying, and I'm able to respond in a way, right? So whether that is you gaining some understanding of how the universe works, and that doesn't have to be like the 100% truth, right? It's just your understanding of how things work, right? So that is something that we are leaning into. Let me see if there's something else I'm picking up here. So of course, with the Lover's card, this can indicate that there's, sorry, I'm just laughing because I heard it in my head first, but I'm just gonna say it. The most boring way to read this is, of course, like about love, but that to me is just kind of one-dimensional, because it's when things happen and shift in love, that's just a sign of things shifting somewhere else, and then other things fall into place when it comes to love, right? That's why I just say it's kind of like the most boring way, because the crux of the situation is something else. That's just an added benefit. But I can read this in a way where you are really kind of removing yourself from this idea of being unworthy of love and being alone, and you're not perpetuating that storyline anymore, and you're opening yourself up in a way that actually truly allows love to come in. And then that even more so supports that shift in changing your perspective of how to connect with people. So yeah, if the structure doesn't permit dialogue, the structure must be changed. And I feel very strongly that the structure was built by you. Again, probably instructed by other people on how to build it, but the structure around you that is keeping you isolated was built by you, for sure. Let's roll some dice on this. We have the third house, that makes sense. We have Libra and we have Mercury. Absolutely, absolutely. This 100% makes sense, because this is about how you communicate with yourself when it comes to relationships, when it comes to all kinds of relationships, not just romantic relationships, but you in relation to another person. So third house is about communication, Mercury is about communication, and then Libra is about bringing balance into relationships, right? So we are thinking and processing a lot about, how am I showing up to the dialogue, which the dialogue, again, I don't want to take this as literal as just communication, right? But there's a lot of communication coming up here, but it's not just as literal as two people talking. It is because what happens when two people are talking and it's a good dialogue, we move the conversation along, right? We explore things, we learn things, we share things, but we listen. There's so many aspects to dialogue that are really important, right? And so dialogue in this sense is more than just you talking to other people, but it's how are we showing up as a whole in order to truly connect with other people. And when it comes to that, I think you have created the structure of, people don't really want to connect with me, or I can't really connect with people because of a certain condition or something. And it's just this narrative of I'm alone and I would like to connect with people, but I can't. And that is what we're healing. We're ending that. We're leaving that behind, because that structure, that thought process, it does not serve you. It does not serve you. And so this is where you're opening yourself up. And the moment you open yourself up, you connect to something that completely shifts that for you and shifts your understanding of how you connect to other people. That is beautiful. Let's pull you an archetype card. This is going to be an aspect. This will not define your entire character, but this is going to be an aspect that your future self would like for you to embrace during this journey. An aspect for group 3 that your future self wants you to embrace during this. Ooh. We have child, magical. Seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, the belief that everything is possible. And see, that is the thing, because, oh, you know what? Along with the butterflies, look at, she's wearing little fairy wings. Along with the butterflies, imagine you grew up as a caterpillar and you see a fly. Not a butterfly, but you see a fly, and you see the fly flying around while you're like, walking along with your little legs, and you're just munching along, and you're just, you know, you're just trying to keep up and trying to, like, also trying to satiate this appetite that you have, right? Just trying. And you see this fly and it's flying right next to you, and you're like, damn, if only I had wings. I wish I had wings. I don't think I'm ever gonna be able to fly. And then you go through this phase, which is like this cocooning phase where you completely turn to goo. Next thing you know, you wake up and you are not just a fly with some boring little wings. You're actually a gorgeous, stunning butterfly. And the thing that you thought you'd never be able to do, you're doing it naturally and effortlessly. And so what your future self wants for you to embrace during this time is to embrace the belief that that is possible, and it is possible for you to change and to get out of this thought process of I am alone and I am alone for a reason, that you are able to overcome that, and that you're able to you're able to find and apply tools that will help you strengthen a new perspective, which is, of course, I'm totally capable of connecting with people. Of course, I'm totally capable of being loved and loving and finding loving friendships and connections. Absolutely. Because here, let me show you the shadow attributes, which is obviously what Spirit wants you, or your future self wants you to release. Pessimism, depression, and disbelief in miracles, believing that energy and action are not required for growth. This is the idea of nothing will change, I'm meant to be alone. Like, this is something that we're leaving behind. Now, again, this bleeds into every aspect of your life, not just romantic relationships. I also want to kind of twist this a little in case this is something a little bit more abstract, meaning this is a disbelief in yourself that is changing into a belief of yourself so that you can receive what is aligned with you. That also means the idea of what you're capable of. So what I'm also seeing here is somebody doesn't believe they're capable of getting that degree, or they're not capable, they're not smart enough for that career choice. And that is just, there's something where you've limited yourself so much mentally that is absolutely untrue, that you need to push yourself to your limit to get out of that thought process And once you change your thought process, one thing will come after another. It will be like domino stones. Everything will fall into place. Now let's get you one of these oracle cards for group 3 from their future self. We got it. Focus on higher truths. Yes, don't focus on the voice that is trying to like nag you. Don't focus on, and take positive action. And that's the thing, like there's definitely focus on higher truths is about the mental capacity. This is about action, right? Take positive action, and in order to do so, we got to get our mind, our mental capacities under control, because that's where we are running into issues. You are absolutely capable of change. You're absolutely capable of connecting with people. It's just that there is this is actually kind of giving me Mercury retrograde vibes, like retrograde in a natal chart, right? So there's just like this thought process that has to be overcome. And once you overcome it, it's like you're not going to go back to the way you thought before. And so focus on higher truths. This is embrace the fact that everything is possible and that miracles are possible. And then also focus on higher truths of like, don't tell yourself stories that just don't fit into the actual narrative. So what I mean by that is the voices that we have in our head are oftentimes, they sound like our voice, but they are oftentimes a mixture of experiences that we've had that made us believe these things, right? That voice can be so ugly, it can be so nasty, and you would never in a million years dare to use that voice towards someone you love, and yet you use it against yourself. That is something that we need to bring awareness to. That is something that we need to bring our attention towards. The fact that you are using negative self-talk to keep yourself in a restricted place. And once you focus on the higher truths of you telling yourself, oh, I just don't connect with people, or I'm always alone, or people always leave. Once we connect to the higher truth on that, it's like, well, do people always leave? Because always is a big word, and you know, you haven't lived all of your life yet. There are lots of experiences that you're still going to have. So using an absolute at the beginning, that's like, imagine you're watching a TV show and you're trying to call the ending by episode 1. It's like, yeah, that can be fun, but that's not helpful if you keep saying like, oh, but this is clearly going to happen by the end of the show. But this is clearly, and then when it doesn't happen, it's like you could have spent all that time just enjoying the show instead of trying to will a certain ending to happen that you projected in episode 1, right? I hope that makes sense for someone. Okay, let's keep it rolling now. Let's get some more oracle cards. Focus on higher truths is also what you're doing with this Hierophant card and the Hanged Man. I do feel like for a lot of you, this is going to have to do with a spiritual awakening or with finding a certain outlet for your spirituality, meaning that can be a certain religion that you start to research and start to partake in, or a certain spiritual practice. It doesn't have to be as constricting as going to church or anything like that. But I definitely see you kind of tapping into something that is larger than just yourself, and therefore kind of adjusting the idea of everything being against you in a way, because it's like, why would it? You know, it just won't. The old narrative that you have will not fit into your new worldview. That's what's coming through. There we go. For group 3, can we get an oracle card? Thank you. We got the Lion, and there was something else. We got let go. We got the Lion and let go. You're holding so much in by constricting yourself so much, holding back a lot emotionally, which also just means that you have put yourself in a place where you're not able to partake in dialogue, which again has to do with some kind of conditioning that you've gone through, which probably means that when you were young, you were told that whatever you had to contribute to a conversation wasn't worthwhile, didn't matter, your feelings didn't matter. There's a lot of things that play into that. However, we need to let go of that narrative because it didn't help you then and it doesn't help you now. So we need to let go of that narrative, and this is the Lion is about working on. I'm literally hearing that line from Lion King, working on my roar, because yeah, that's exactly it. Simba is like, I'm working on my roar, and then he has like this little wow. But it takes practice to know how and when to communicate, when to speak up. It takes practice. And if you feel like you're typically someone who isn't very outspoken or isn't very good at communicating with people, it can be really difficult to get out of that space, because in order to get out of that space, we really have to push ourselves, right? We really have to push ourselves into social situations where we are forced to engage that muscle, because that's the thing, it is a muscle, right? But you will roar, like you absolutely will. And I think you will roar once you are emboldened by some kind of shift in perspective that really takes a lot of the tension off of you and makes you understand how we all collectively struggle with this idea of like, oh no, I'm gonna say something really stupid, or just that fear of appearing like not smart in front of crowds or anything like that. Like, we all collectively have those experiences, and I think you just kind of really took it really hard, and there's just a lot of constricting energy around communication when it comes to you. And I think there's an opportunity for you in the future to really kind of educate yourself. I think this also has a lot to do, the Hierophant along with the Hanged Man has a lot to do with educating yourself. For some of you, okay, just for whoever it applies to, this could have to do with you educating yourself around some kind of condition. And I think I mentioned that earlier because I know I said condition. What I mean by that is exploring or doing some kind of research around neurodivergency or the autism spectrum, anything like that, or even like a speech impediment, anything where it comes to communication where there might be some kind of disconnect. I see you gravitating towards some sort of research that makes you understand that you were not the problem, that there was a problem, there was a barrier, but that is something that you can overcome through practice, and that you can overcome through educating yourself on how to overcome that. That there are resources out there, and it is something that you will find and connect with, and you will feel understood, and it will make things just flow so much easier, and it will empower you in a way to communicate like you've never done before. That is so awesome. Let's get you one last oracle card for group 3. Oh, see, look at this. Authenticity is sweet. I used to be a thing, I am a person now. And then we have sow kindness, reap love. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. That is, why is that giving me goosebumps? To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. And that is connecting to this child card. What was it? Child magical. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. And then authenticity is sweet. I used to be a thing. I am a person now. That again is connecting to me, or for me, to the idea of neurodivergency, because it's this idea of people probably having told you like, oh, you're different, or you're weird, or you're like, that's not how you communicate, or you don't get social cues. And so people in some capacity making you feel really misunderstood and making you feel other than, and really kind of ostracizing yourself or ostracizing you, and then you kind of toning yourself down because you didn't want to experience that anymore. But I really see you connecting with something or a community that is really going to embrace you just the way you are. Okay, so authenticity is sweet. I used to be a thing, I am a person now. So to sum it up, your future self is saying, if the structure doesn't permit dialogue, the structure must be changed, because the problem isn't you. The problem is the structure that you are trying to fit into. So we need to break free from that structure. I have goosebumps right now. We need to break free from that structure, because there is so much connection and love and understanding out there for you, but not within that structure. We cannot hold on to that structure and experience all this beauty at the same time. We're going to have to break free, and that is going to cause a lot of internal conflict, but we're going to have to break free and overcome that in the name of healing your relationship with yourself, so that you can then open yourself up to this shift. And you're going to. That's what your higher self or your future self is here to tell you. Like, this is a process that you have already begun. Okay? I also lastly want to say that if this has to do with a relationship, because dialogue can, and we're talking about relationships in general, so this is going to bleed into all of your relationships, but if you are currently in a relationship that doesn't make you feel understood, valued, loved, then that is something that we need to break free from for our own good. And you will find love again, absolutely. Okay? Ooh, wow. I feel so strongly about this reading, because I feel so strongly that you are being so hard on yourself, and that there is this defeatist energy that we are putting to rest, because there is like a whole world of something that is going to empower you in a way that is going to change how you connect to other people. There's going to be a time before this and a time after this, just like there is a time where the butterfly is the caterpillar and then the butterfly, right? And that in between stage of being in the cocoon, that's kind of where we're at. I think you're already in there and you're already changing, but there's something that's really going to set that off. And there will be a time before this, and there will be a time after this. And the time after this is going to feel so supportive and so loving and aligned. And it's going to be, you will never connect to the thought processes that you had previously, that you had before. You'll never think that way again. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really hope that this can give you some confirmations. This is a beautiful reading, and I hope, you know, if it's a bit much, I understand. Give it some time. You can read it or watch it again in the future. But I feel very strongly about this reading. So I'm very much rooting for you, because there's a lot of beautiful, beautiful connection waiting for you. Okay, it's not going anywhere. You're never going to miss it. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope I get to read for you again sometime. Until then, take care.